Morning, good afternoon. Welcome to this special webinar. My name is Michael Jones, Senior International Partnerships Manager at WRAP, and I will be moderating today's session. Today is a special webinar. It has not one, but two launches today. The first, Friends of Champions 12.3 Arab region, and second, guidance on the connection between food loss and waste and greenhouse gases. Both are supporting the fight against food waste and the global ambition to halve food waste by 2030. In terms of the schedule for today, this very much incorporates the vision of Champions 12.3 to inspire ambition and mobilise action to reduce food loss and waste globally. We have a packed agenda to support that vision, and my trusted colleague Panima will help me keep us a track on time. There'll be 4 presentations today covering Champions 12.3 and the Friends Network, an introduction to the Friends of Champion 12.3 Arab region, enabling 12.3 and GHG guidance. This will be complemented with an opportunity for questions, an interactive poll, and close. All of the content today will be delivered in English. The session will be recorded. The chat and Q&A functions are enabled. Please use the Q&A function for any questions that you may have. Recording and presentations will be shared after the session today. So, in terms of today and getting the session underway, we have 3 presenters, 3 leading experts presenting today, and I'll introduce them all now as the presenters will share their own screens and we will have back-to-back presentations. We have Dr. Liz Goodwin, Senior Fellow and Director of Food Loss and Waste at WRI, the Waste and Resources Institute. We have Seta Tununjan, Founder and CEO of Thriving Solutions. And we have David Rogers, International Director at WRAP. So Liz, if it's okay with you, I'll stop sharing my screen and we can go over to your first presentation, setting out Champions 12.3 and the Friends Network.
Thank you very much, David. Let me know if you can't see my slides, but I assume you can.
We can indeed.
Great. So thank you very much for the invitation to join this session today. I am delighted that we're talking about Champions 12.3 and about setting up a Friends network in the Arab region. If we just think a little bit about the scale of the overall problem, I think everyone is familiar with the stats. It's estimated that around 1/3 of all food produced is either lost or wasted, and actually more recent figures have indicated that it might be even higher than that. And that represents around 1/4 of the world's calories in terms of food supply. It costs nearly $1 trillion every year. It's a waste of nearly 10% of greenhouse gas emissions, 1/4 of all the water used in agriculture. And if current trends continue, then the amount of food waste is going to double by 2050. So that is completely unsustainable, and it's also morally a scandal when you've got 1 in 9 globally malnourished. So there's huge health, nutrition, economic, social, environmental reasons for trying to do something about food loss and waste. And I think it's worthwhile thinking a little bit about the context in which we're talking about food loss and waste. We've got increasing evidence of climate change. We've got ongoing wars in Ukraine and Gaza. We've got the ongoing effects of COVID-19 and governments trying to steer their way through the impacts of all those things. It's resulted in increasing changing weather patterns, which obviously affects our food supply, energy price rises, which have resulted in food price rises and shortages, hikes in fertilizer prices, and shocks and disruption to the food supply system. So the food system is really in pretty fragile state at the moment, and at the same time we're wasting a ridiculous amount of the food that we do produce. So back in 2015, it was recognised that we needed to do something about food waste, and so one of the Sustainable Development Goals 12, under the SDG 12, in the specifically SDG 12.3, was all about food waste, food loss and food waste, and it aims to halve food waste by 2030 and reduce food losses along the supply chains by the same date. And alongside that SDG, there was a coalition of leaders was pulled together, which was basically Champions 12.3. And these are people and organizations who are committed to trying to help make sure that the world achieves a halving of food waste, food loss and waste. Now, in terms of that, we're now 9 years further on from that. And, you know, there has been a lot of work in the process, but that basic premise is that there's a group of people and organizations who want to halve food loss and waste and get behind 12.3, and that's where the Champions and Friends Champions 12.3 comes from. If we look at the drivers and the reasons why we have food loss and waste, it's never a single thing that causes it. It's caused by a whole range of things. There are lots of structural issues in our globe, in our world, in the way things work, in the way countries are structured, the way legislation is set up, all of which means that the framework in which we're operating isn't conducive to reducing food loss and waste. And then within that, there are a whole range of different factors. So there are technology problems, there are management problems, and there are behavioural problems. And when you see examples of food loss and waste happening, it's never a single thing that's caused all that food loss and waste to happen. It's always a multiple of some of these various issues coming together. And so that's why it's complex to try to understand and reduce food loss and waste. And when we think back to this Champions 12.3 group, when we first started, we thought, well, how do we go about having a very simple approach to reducing food loss and waste? So we came up with a very simple strategy, which is all about target, measure, act. And it's a mantra we've been talking about ever since we started. If you set your target, that means you're setting ambition, you're saying it's important, and that motivates action. If you then start to measure, you actually start to see where your problems are, where the opportunities are, and where your hotspots are. And as soon as you start measuring, you can then manage it, because otherwise you're just working without real evidence or information about where the problems are. So measurement is a really important step. And then as soon as you start measuring, you get action, because as soon as you see where the issues are, it's easy to think, oh, well, I can do X, Y, and Z, and you can actually make a difference. And that simple target, measure, act approach works all the way through the supply chain, right through from the production, well, right through from the farm, through the production, through the storage, distribution, processing, retail, and right through to the end user. So thinking target, measure, act is a good way of helping to think your way through the whole problem of food loss and waste. And of course, we talked in my first slide, I had a piece about the cost of this. Food loss and waste is hidden to a lot of people. So you see the disposal costs, but actually there are lots of invisible costs, especially for businesses. So, you know, there's the embedded costs. If you are running a business and you have some food waste, you pay to dispose of that food waste, fine. But you've also lost all the materials that you bought, which went into that food that you then ended up throwing away, plus all the energy in terms of your time you've been handling it, all the labor costs, all the water costs. So there are lots of invisible costs below the line. And that means that the actual true cost of food waste is much higher than might be first apparent when you look at your balance sheet. And we did a piece of work a few years ago to look at that. And the median company had a 14-to-1 benefit in reducing food loss and waste. Now that's an astonishing figure, and it was also noticeable that a lot of the investments required were quite small and quite modest. So they were generally a few $1,000s. They weren't hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to actually make an improvement. So actually, a lot of fairly simple solutions can help to reduce food loss and waste, and there's a big financial benefit. But because you've only seen the disposal cost in your balance sheet, you might not have prioritised it to the degree you should have done. And since we've been working on food loss and waste, we've had lots of progress, in particular among businesses. To be honest, less among countries and governments, but businesses are beginning to see that there is a real business case for reducing food loss and waste, and it benefits. It has all the wider benefits of it improves it for them as a business because of their financial bottom line, but improves their societal benefits, their economic, environmental benefits as well. And here's just a smattering. This slide is quite old, so I know there are many more, but you start to run out of space on a slide as to being able to illustrate the different sorts of organisations who are setting targets and measuring, and they're all starting to see the benefits of reducing food loss and waste. And I hope that in the future we'll be able to have another box, which is the Arab Friends of Champions 12.3 and all the organisations in the Arab region who are starting to measure and to take action. So then finally, the Friends of Champions 12.3. So this is allowing us to develop a broader network of organisations all around the world, because actually at the end of the day, we need hundreds, thousands of organisations all working towards reducing food loss and waste if we're going to achieve that overall halving of food loss and waste. So this is the idea behind the Friends of Champions network. All these organisations involved in the network are helping and focused on helping to reduce food loss and waste, both in their operations, but also in their supply chains and with their peer organisations, and where they work with consumers as well, with their consumers. We've got a very flexible structure. So many people have joined the Friends network as individual organisations, but we've also identified the need for having regional networks. And the Arab region one is an example of that. So we've got other networks. We've got a network running in New Zealand. We've got one in India, and we've got one in the USA. So the Arab region is the newest one, and that will be an opportunity for you to have specific conversations among yourselves, where there will be region-specific solutions, region-specific needs. You can talk about measurements and some of the issues that you have. You can make sure that all the guidance and the terminology is right for your needs and your situation. So that's the idea behind the Arab region Friends of Champions network, and I'm delighted that you're going to be participating, creating a network, and I hope you'll all be very actively involved. And I'm now going to hand over to Seta, who I think is going to take over from me. Seta.
Thank you, Liz. Good morning, everyone. And let me share. I hope everyone can see my presentation.
Not just yet. Want to try again?
Yes, I am. Okay.
Can't say anything just yet, unfortunately.
I hope you can see it now.
Still
from your Microsoft Teams call rather than PowerPoint.
Sorry, could you just repeat that, Sam, just to help Seta?
On your Teams page, at the top of the screen above everyone's faces is share rather than sharing via PowerPoint.
Okay, it says that it's sharing my screen.
Something is happening. There we go. We can see your title slide.
Okay, perfect.
Seta, over to you.
So I'm really delighted to be launching today the Friends of Champions 12.3 in the Arab region. The Arab region is a region that's, sorry, I need to now know how to scroll. It's frozen. Okay, the Arab region is a region that spans across North Africa and West Asia. It includes many countries. Most of these countries have a very limited arable land. We are the most water scarce region in the world. So really, food security and growing our food is a challenge. We import a high percentage of our food. Yet in that region with so much food imports, which in some countries exceed 90%, we have one of the highest food waste and food loss rates globally. It is estimated that around 44% of our food ends up in landfills. And here we're talking about food that is fit for human consumption. And during holidays, during Ramadan, we're approaching Ramadan in a few weeks, that the wastage can go up even to more than 50%. However, the other challenge in the region is that these are estimates. We, with the exception of Saudi Arabia, which has done some measurements for its household and for its hospitality sectors, all of the other data in the region is of low confidence or very low confidence data, meaning that these are estimates benchmarked on other countries. So as Liz highlighted, if we do not measure, we really do not know how to deal with the situation and address it. So it's very critical for us also to go after measurement to be able to handle this situation. In addition to that, we really have minimal public awareness in the region about the magnitude of the problem. People are aware maybe about food loss, but not to what extent food is being wasted, and the capacity and skills within the region to deal with this problem is still limited and in its infancy. So the vision for the Arab Champions 12.3 or Friends of Champions 12.3 is really to convene all of those actors, be it individuals, be it institutions in the region that are working towards really SDG 12.3, that's why it's called Champions 12.3, to reduce food waste and loss, to convene them together and connect them so that they can build relationships among their organizations, among practitioners, among innovators that are coming out from the region on how to address this problem, and encourage and facilitate collaboration among them so that they can join forces and capitalize on each other's strengths so we can see a stronger initiative for reducing food waste and loss in the region. And we also seek under this network to empower these players, empower them and fuel progress through making available resources that are applicable and to the region, and international resources that can be adapted to our region. So what is the objective of the network? We're looking at 4 major objectives. The first one is to increase public awareness at a regional level. So capture and communicate successes across the region to motivate countries, to motivate institutions, to put targets towards addressing food loss and waste, and to adopt the target measure approach. For this, we are looking also to collaborate when local actors and organizations exist, to collaborate with them. The second one is capacity building in the region, that to enable the capacity that is required to meet target 12.3. And we're talking here capacity on measuring food loss and waste, capacity related to the interventions that can reduce food loss and waste, and capacity related to capturing what is happening in the region and to report it and to celebrate progress, to motivate, to increase awareness and motivate more action. We're also looking to make resources applicable to the region that are available, they are accessible as open access. So here we're talking to develop region-specific resources as well as to localize relative and applicable international resources. And as a priority now, we are seeking to see interest in sponsoring the localization and Arabization of the international protocol and standard for food loss and waste, which is the applicable standard on how to measure food loss and waste. And the fourth objective is advocate for improving the enabling conditions to reduce food loss and waste. Liz mentioned in her presentation, the drivers. There are three main categories of drivers for food loss and waste. So how can we improve those enabling conditions to reduce those drivers? We're looking to identify existing gaps in policy, existing gaps in data, skills, and advocate for interventions to close those gaps, as well as to seek funding to support projects and what's happening on the ground in the regions to create the enabling environment. So the governance module about the Champions 12.3, the Arab Champions 12.3, we fall under the Champions 12.3. There are other regional networks, as Liz mentioned them. We're looking to establish, at least in this preliminary stage, the Arab Champions 12.3 will be hosted under Thriving Solutions. RAP has been helping us throughout the past few months to set it up. We are looking to have a governing committee that will be overseeing the work. The governing committee will comprise of institutional sponsors to the regional network. And the network will be looking like overseeing what we will be doing as the Secretariat is overseeing operations, ensuring interest of stakeholders are represented. And by stakeholders here, we mean all of the members, the free members to the network that are working towards reducing food loss and waste in the region. We will be looking at facilitating cooperation and collaboration among these members. We will be fundraising for initiatives that we can implement in conjunction with national players and monitoring progress at a regional level. The responsibilities of the Secretariat or Thriving Solutions acting as the Secretariat is to host the Secretariat for the champions and handle all administrative and financial matters. We're going to be liaising with the International Champions 12.3 to maintain seamless communication and collaboration between us. We're hosting the website. The website on the Arab Champions is now on Thriving Solutions website. You can access it as thrivingsolutions.earth. We will also be looking in the future to establish a platform for collaboration that would bring together all practitioners working in the region, which are individuals, because skills are scarce currently in the region that are specialized in this area. So we want to bring them together and bring together those that are interested in the field and allow them to share information. We're also looking to we will be creating a collaborative ecosystem to tackle food loss and waste as we mobilize resources. Progress to date is we've had support. Thank you to the UK government for supporting us to establish the Arab Friends of Champions 12.3 network. And they supported us to develop actually the first two resources that are for this region. One we're launching just after this, which is the Addendum to companies in the United Arab Emirates on how to calculate the carbon footprint of food loss and waste. The other one is going to be launched in 2 weeks prior to Ramadan, which is an Excel-based tool for calculating the water footprint of food loss and waste in the United Arab Emirates, along with a guidance and an instructional video. The aspirations for the next phase for the Arab Champions is we are looking forward to developing a shared vision and roadmap for the region through a consultative process with those that are working on the ground, the organizations on the ground. We seek, of course, as I mentioned, to develop diverse resources, and we're looking, including case studies, guidelines, tools, training material, and we will be working with institutions on the ground to identify what are the priority resources that are needed by them. Then overseeing localization of international resources to make them accessible and relevant to the region, and also to look at the possibility of carrying regional campaigns and competitions that can engage the public and raise awareness throughout the region to foster this culture of responsible consumption and waste management. So how can you join the Arab Champions, the Arab Friends of Champions 12.3? There are different avenues. First of all, you can become a member. This is a free membership that is open to all organizations, businesses, and individuals. On our website, you will find a registration form where you can register either as an institution or as an individual. You will be asked then to send some information via email. The other way to join us is to become a governing member. This is for institutional sponsors that are committed to advancing SDG 12.3 in the region. And by becoming an institutional sponsor, the institution will be part of the governing body, governing the regional network, sponsoring an event, sponsoring a resource to the region, or sponsoring a campaign. We're currently developing a regional campaign that we can share, and we do have a few priority resources that we're also looking to start on immediately. There is a QR code that you can see on the screen. If you scan this, if you are interested to become part of the member of Friends of Champions, you can scan this QR code. It will give you access to a WhatsApp group that we're looking also to bring those that are working in the region as a way of fast communicating with each other and exchanging lessons learned. Thank you.
Thank you, Seta.
I think we can be open to questions. Do you want to take questions now or later? I'm going to put my other presentation just so that.
Yeah. So Seta, if it's okay, what we'll do is we'll do David's presentation. So we've got the 3 introductory presentations, and then we'll go to some questions if that's okay.
Okay, so I'll do the addendum later.
Perfect. Fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah, after the questions.
Perfect.
David, we can see your slides.
Great.
So over to you.
Well, thank you very much. And just thank you to everybody who has joined us today. And congratulations on the launch of this chapter, the Arab Friends of Champions 12.3. And thank you to the previous speakers as well for such excellent points. And I'm joining you here today from a very unseasonably warm and wet UK, which is a reminder really of what is at play here, these unpredictable weather systems that we're starting to see as a result of climate change and the impact on the ability to grow and provide food for all of us around the world is really a reminder of how important it is that we do all take action and make some real progress. So today I'm just going to hopefully give some inspiration and a bit of hope to show you some of the work that has been done in the UK and around the world to make some real impact in addressing how the food system works. And so without any further ado, I will talk. One of the things that you've heard from Liz and from Seta is just the scale of the challenge and how important it is to be acting on the food system, both the impact in greenhouse gases and also in water consumption, and it's particularly relevant in this part of the world where there is water scarcity. The system is complicated. It is a system, and it does require multiple actions to make changes. Unfortunately, there isn't one single silver bullet. There isn't one solution that we can just all agree on and make a change and the whole food system will be better. We need to work right across the chain from the way that food is produced, the way that it is sold and used, and then how we as consumers interact with food. And so we need to make the most of our raw resources and what happens to food through the whole entire supply chain. And that's why the approach that Liz mentioned that WRI have championed has been so powerful. So what do we do actually to drive change? So taking the inspiration from WRI and the Target Measure Act approach, we really take a holistic view of the whole system. So we started this in the UK, and have now been working in multiple countries around the world to test and develop this approach. Our approach is really based around the idea of taking a really good measurement about what is happening, to understand what is really happening. Where is waste arising? Was it's on the farm or through the supply chain or in people's homes? Using that consistent measurement and reporting to identify where to take action, and then understanding the impact of those actions taken, reanalyzing and seeing whether more needs to be done or whether that is a change that is now a long-term embedded practice which is going to reduce waste over a longer period. We have, in order to reflect the fact that this requires interventions in both the policy space and in business practices and with citizens, we have set up a network of public-private partnerships where businesses and governments can come together, measure the situation in a particular place, understand what the targets are needed to take action to reduce food waste in that particular place, and then agree those actions, take those actions. And for the people who have the ability to influence parts of the supply chain or parts of the governance that govern the food system in a place, are able to do the things that they can control in order to really drive change. And that leads to identifying projects throughout the supply chain. And when we bring together retailers and their suppliers and the government, we can make changes in the supply chain which have a benefit. Other things that we have done, so a lot of food waste in many countries, one of the largest sources of food waste is actually in the home. And so citizens, how we all use food and how we buy and store and prepare food and how we value it does have an impact on the amount of food that goes to waste. And that is something that we've been working on in the UK and other countries. In fact, we did some work on this in Saudi Arabia a few years ago around Ramadan and around the provision of food. So it's interesting to get the cultural dynamics and see what is driving us as consumers to waste food, which nobody wants to do, but happens as a result of a number of things. And also, really, it's important to support infrastructure for the better growing, storage, transportation of food, redistribution of food that would otherwise go to waste, and so on. So there's a lot that we can actually do, and we're seeing more of this happening around the world, as I mentioned. So we started in the UK, and we've been working since 2007 on this issue in the UK, using that public-private partnership approach, working with government on things like date labelling and food policy, working with businesses on how food is produced, sold, marketed, packaged, all of which has an impact on levels of waste, and working with citizens through our Love Food, Hate Waste campaign, which has encouraged people in the home to have a better relationship with food. That model has now been adapted and adopted in a number of countries around the world. And you can see from the map, this is quite a spread across different cultural contexts, different political contexts, different economic contexts. And we've seen that this model can actually work. It is adaptable, and it is driving change in a number of those other countries that you can see on the map. And we're really excited to start working in Brazil and Colombia and other areas of the world where we can hopefully bring this model and adapt it and drive real change as well. And to show that this isn't just hot air, we have some evidence that this does work. We know that between 2015 and 2018 in the UK, so the last set of data we have before the pandemic changed everything and made everything look slightly strange, as we've all experienced. We know that around 4.5 billion pounds of food waste was prevented and saved, 1.7 million tons of food waste, and we doubled the amount of food that was donated that would have otherwise gone to waste. And that from the time we started working on this in 2007 up to 2018, we were at a 27% reduction in edible food waste in the UK, with an annual carbon saving of around 5 million tonnes. And now we know that the next set of data after this was impacted by the pandemic, but we're still looking at around a 30% overall reduction of food waste in the UK from the time that we started. And we are starting to get data from the other countries that are suggesting the real impact is happening there. And those changes are long-term embedded changes that go through any governmental changes and economic ups and downs. So we know that this is having a real impact. Which brings me to the Arab region, UAE in particular. We have been working with Thriving Solutions and supported by the Foreign Office of the UK. So thank you very much to the UK government to introduce the Food Loss and Waste Protocol and Food and Loss and Waste Standard in the UAE, and to review third-party greenhouse gas measurements tools. I mean, this is really helpful in terms of identifying where the interventions can take place, what is the actual level of waste that's happening, what's driving it, and enables yourselves as members of the Friends of Champions 12.3 to take action and know exactly that those actions are impactful and long-lasting. But we all need to work together. Collaborative action is the most effective way to drive change, as we've just seen. And so we need to really scale up our action and impact now so that we can have a chance of hitting the 12.3 goal and reducing the impact of the food system on climate change. So congratulations on launching this, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you, David, and to all the presenters. You've all kept to time, which is very good. We're going to open the session up now for some questions to those three presentations. So please do use the Q&A function for that. Whilst I'll give you a bit of time to think on that, just a couple of important announcements before we get on to the questions. One is in the chat function, you'll see the link to the Arab Friends of Champions 12.3 sign-up form. Please reference that, click on it, sign up, go there for additional information. So the link is there and will be available after the session today. The second point is to acknowledge FCDO, the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, for their support with this webinar today and for a number of the resources which we'll be touching on and referenced through this session. So thank you for that support. Whilst we're thinking about some questions, I guess just reflecting on those three presentations just now, I noted a number of things. One is the Champions 12.3 network is growing, which is fantastic to see. We're seeing greater commitment from stakeholders to get behind the target and to start delivering on it. But also the power of, if we tackle food loss and waste, it also unlocks other opportunities: water efficiency, operational savings, carbon savings. All of those are integral and make the case for tackling food loss and waste at scale. And we've heard Target Measure Act referenced throughout the presentations, absolutely key principles to reducing food loss and waste, but also we've demonstrated that they actually do work if they are applied to by stakeholders. And then the final part was this collaboration piece is absolutely important. We've talked about the need for raising awareness, providing empowerment, localizing resources to context, all really important. And that collaborative element can enable that to happen. So there were just a few points from me. Welcome any questions now. Ratko, Panima, Sam, if there's anything you can help me with here. Is there anything come through on the Q&A? Okay, oh, we've got one just come through now. How can we support the work of Arab Friends in the UAE, and how can we find partners to our own work? Seta, do you want to respond to that?
Thank you for the question. So first of all, by becoming a member, that is a way of support and connecting with other members. Sponsoring us or the different activities that we do in the network is another very strong means, because it would provide us with the financial resources to be able to carry the work that we have the ambition for. One of the things that we are seeking to establish is an online platform to connect everyone other than the WhatsApp group. So that is going to be hopefully coming up, and it's a way to connect. And stay posted. Like, we do have a webinar coming up in 2 weeks, which is on the water tool. We will be carrying we are looking forward to carrying 4 webinars at least during the year on aspects that are of interest. We have the newsletter. We will be sending an email to look about of the interests of those that have joined as members, to be able to address the needs and the requirements of those working in the field. So we're also open to suggestions from you on how we can help you.
Thank you so much, Seta, for that. I'm just seeing if there's anyone. Oh, someone's got their hands up. I think it will have to be written in the Q&A if you've got a question, unfortunately.
You can send an email. There
Yeah.
is an email on the website or with suggestions to us, or if you want to receive any of the sponsorship packages, we have detailed information packages.
Fantastic. And Seta, whilst we're waiting for that question to potentially come through, in terms of the next steps then, so hopefully we'll have motivated delegates from today wishing to sign up. What will they see next then? Will they receive some confirmation? And then you mentioned newsletters and webinars coming up.
So we have the webinar. The announcement will be out in the coming few days on the water tool that how to calculate the water footprint, basically blue water and green water of food that is imported, that is wasted, and that is locally produced, and that is redistributed. We have the tool developed now for the UAE. So we will be launching that as a resource in the next 2 weeks. And as another priority that we are looking to raise funds for is, as I mentioned, the Arabization of the international standard and protocol, so that we can also carry an in-depth training to people in the region or organizations that want to measure their food loss and waste. This is the standard that is applicable and that needs to be adhered for. And we're also looking to launch something called 52 Arab Champions for Waste. And this is basically an open call and competition to seek and identify champions that are working across our region in waste prevention, redistribution, and recovering waste and bringing it back to the food system, and to celebrate them, because one of the best ways is to learn from each other about what we are doing and what is applicable in our region. So if anyone is interested in any of those that I mentioned, please reach out to me personally or to my partner, Dima Maroon. She will put our emails in the chat box.
I believe people are registering even now as you speak, Seta, which is fantastic to see. We've just got a question through now. Will Friends enable young researchers such as PhD students to contribute to the research on food loss and waste, an opportunity to be involved in conferences, webinars, etc.?
Yes, all of our resources that we will be developing under the Arab Champions and the webinars are open access and free. Once you see the announcement, if you want to receive, first of all, if you want to receive the announcement, please register, because our members of the champions will be receiving all announcement for upcoming webinars and events, whether we are holding them or if any of the members are holding any events that are open, we will also be sharing those as a way to encourage collaboration. But all of our webinars and resources are going to be open access. So they're available to all, they will be recorded, and they will be available on our site for later access.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Nothing else coming through. Oh, sorry, one more question here. How do you see gaps in current research on food loss and waste, and what areas need more focus, especially in the Arab region? So did you want?
Yeah, so in the Arab region, actually, there is with the exception of Saudi Arabia for its households and hospitality, I believe it was hospitality, there is no other high confidence data coming from the region. Actually, in North Africa, there isn't any country in North Africa that all the countries are at very low confidence data. That means that there is no research or no data and evidence to base upon. There are initiatives for carrying waste measurement across the region, small initiatives. Unfortunately, most of them, they do not follow the international standard and they do not document properly. So this also ventures the data low confidence. That's why for us, the priority is actually trying to Arabize the protocol and standard, because the protocol identifies, provides a clear map on how to do the measurement and how to report on the measurement so that data is comparable to other regions. Countries can use this as benchmarking for their waste reporting and loss reporting. There is a methodology by FAO for food loss. There is a methodology by UNEP for food waste. Both of them are based on this standard. So that's very critical in our region. And the major gap is, let's do the measurement, let's identify the drivers and our hotspots so that we can do action.
Fantastic. And this is an opportunity to bring David and Liz into this conversation as well. I know, working on international food for a number of years, the agricultural phase is a critical element in terms of understanding and getting the research to really unearth the real opportunity within that phase of the supply chain, and understanding citizens, the complex nature of people and their relationship and attitudes towards the consumption and purchasing of food is something that you really need to research and understand if you're going to have the greatest impact and interventions. Welcome any kind of builds on those. That's what I kind of recognize. It's the start and the end of the supply chain, which is the critical elements to really understand on top of the middle part.
Yeah, and I think in particular in a region that has high food imports, the looking less at what's grown locally and more about the behaviour of consumers demanding food that is brought in, and then the impacts of that further down the supply chain. So that behaviour change piece is highly complicated to understand, but also really important, as well as working with the businesses as they source those products. How can they do that in a way that's more sustainable and helps the region and the world to thrive?
I'd echo that, and I think it comes back to understanding where your hotspots are, and it's clear that the information already suggests there are some hotspots at the consumer end, which means the importance of looking there. But there will be some as a result of the the importation process and things being stored and at the retail and hospitality.
I also want to mention, Michael, that last year, Thriving Solutions did an analysis of the national determined contributions of all Arab countries. And in the analysis sought to see how are they dealing with food loss and waste, which countries have targets for food loss and waste within the NDC, and what is their targets for waste management. So that report is available on our website. And as Liz mentioned, the first step is to put a target in place. And this can also show countries that still are not reflecting this into their targets.
Fantastic. For the purposes of time, we'll take a couple more questions. I believe some delegates have had issues using the Q&A function. So apologies if you struggled there. Any questions that we don't answer in the session today, we can look at and respond afterwards. But there is a question here about, will efforts happening through the Arab Friends be marketed to public for best practice sharing? So will a network be cascading the best practice beyond the network?
So I'll pick up on that first.
Yeah.
Yes, because we'll be getting information from SETA about what's going on, which we can then put in the global newsletter, and we can share more broadly with the other networks around the world.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Yes, I said there's another. Yes, sorry, go on.
Yeah, Michael, there's a question in chat from Tasneem.
Okay.
If you can,
Could you read that out for me?
Yeah, so are Arab friends in contact in some sessions or webinars to the whole world, where are some best practices can be applied and ideas can be shared too?
So yes, again, there are some webinars that will be run at a global level, and the Arab Friends will be invited to join any of those that they wish to as well. So yes, that you can access the wider Friends network, is not just the Arab Friends.
Fantastic, great. And then there's a question here about the, is there any more information about the business case for reducing food loss and waste? So Liz, you presented the slide with the 14:1 ratio. I know there is a comprehensive report that goes with that. We can share the link to that report.
Yeah, there are actually, I think there is a suite of 3 reports covering different areas, one covering hotels, one covering restaurants, and I forget about the other one, but there are 3 looking at businesses, different parts of the different sectors, looking at the business case. So they're all on the Champions 12.3 website, but if you're able to share the link, that'd be helpful.
Fantastic, brilliant.
We also developed case studies out of the UAE with this project that we will also be publishing with RAP, which are specific to the UAE.
Fantastic, brilliant. Okay, for the purposes of time, we will move on, but many thanks for the questions. I've seen some more have come through. Let us respond to those after the session, and we'll share the information with you. SETA, we're making you work today because the next part of the session is to talk about the GHG guidance tool. So if you're able to share your presentation and run through it, that'd be fantastic.
So connecting, this is the addendum that we are that we will be launching. It would be available on our website within a week. And it's a guidance to companies in the United Arab Emirates on how to use. There is a global guidance that was developed by the International Food Loss and Waste Standard on how to connect food loss and waste to greenhouse gas emissions guidance to company. So our report is basically how can companies in the UAE use this global guidance tool. Okay, so if we're looking at food loss and waste, why is it important to link it to greenhouse gases? 10% of global greenhouse gases are actually gases that are generated by food that is lost or wasted and that ends up in the landfill. That makes food loss and waste actually the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases in terms, if we want to compare it to countries that are currently large emitters of greenhouse gases. Also, there is a global project which is called Project Drawdown that did the analysis of what are the top 100 solutions for reducing our carbon footprint and dealing with mitigating climate change. And reducing food loss and waste is seen as one of the top 5 solutions. I think it was the 2nd solution. And according to their calculation, if we reduced food loss and waste by 50% by 2050, we can avoid around 88 gigatons of CO2 equivalent in terms of emissions, and that's a big number. So that's the climate dimension of reducing food loss and waste. Now, this is the guidance on connecting food loss and waste to greenhouse companies. And basically, the guidance informs that to calculate the greenhouse gases, you have to multiply the amount of food loss and waste that you have measured, that you have. You multiply it by the relevant greenhouse gas emission. So what do we mean by the relevant greenhouse gas emissions? We're looking at those emission factors that are associated either with producing the food, including be it from harvest, from slaughter, or throughout the different stages of the supply chain up until the moment where food is lost or wasted and goes for management. And also looking at the emission factors related to where that food loss and goes. What is the destination that that food ends up in? So there are 4 steps in that guidance. The first step is companies need to gather data on the amount of food loss and waste and the different aspects that affect the related emission factors. The second step, which is a crucial step, is selecting the relative emission factors. And based when they have that, they can calculate the green gas emissions associated. And the 4th step, which is important, is how to summarize the results, and including to document the calculating approach, the sources of uncertainties and assumptions. This is if a company wants to do the calculation on their own without using any of the available tools. Now, the guidance also includes 9 third-party tools. These are tools that were developed by different parties, and they have different geographic focus, the stages that it is covered, whether it is agricultural production, whether it is at the processing or later stages. There are 9 tools for companies to select. And the guidance identifies 4 factors that are critical for companies when they select which tool they want to use. The first one is geographical representativeness. Does the tool that you're selecting, does it cover the geographic area where you are presently? The second area is the completeness, which is how much the degree to which the data is statistically represented of the relevant activity of that institution that wants to calculate the greenhouse gases related to food loss and waste. The 4th is the reliability in terms of sources, the data collection methods, the verification procedures, and this is very important. And the 4th aspect is the technological representative, the degree to which the data set reflects the actual technology or technologies used within the company that is measuring the food loss and waste. So for us, one of the first critical items to evaluate when we evaluate those tools is the geographic representativeness before we even start to look at the other factors. So the addendum to companies in the United Arab Emirates on how to use this guidance, international guidance, we look to identify, to evaluate and identify which of these third-party tools can be used by the companies in their current form or that can be adapted to be suitable for the UAE. And the second step of our research looked to identify what are the current main secondary data sources for conversion factors that can be used by companies in the UAE. Now, when you determine your conversion factor to use, you can either use primary data, which is you need to do actually life cycle assessments as a company to identify what are the conversion factors for your own product company that's applicable. This is usually quite an expensive endeavor. So usually companies would go to secondary data sources. So we wanted to identify what are the secondary data sources for these conversion factors that can be used by our companies. So this is the methodology. The first one, we looked at the assumptions and the aspects of food waste affecting related emissions that are within each tool. Then we identified which tools include conversion factors that apply to the UAE, and we highlighted how a UAE company can use this tool when applicable. For tools that do not include conversion factors that apply to the UAE, we identified if they are applicable or adaptable to the UAE in terms of their completeness, in terms of if they are covering an area that is important or that is applicable to the UAE. And then does the tool allow the function for you to enter your own conversion factor? So after this, we were able to identify the tools that cannot be used by companies. They're not applicable to the UAE. And then the last stage for our research, we reviewed the secondary data sources to identify conversion factors that companies can refer to when they are calculating. So from our findings, these are the 9 tools. Only one tool, which is the tool developed by CGIR, the Agro-Chain Greenhouse Gas Emissions Calculator, includes a geographic code that can be applicable for the UAE. That geographic, it includes one geographic code, which is North Africa and Western Central Asia. So this is an area where UAE falls in. Now, this is not 100% conversion factor for the UAE, but it is a conversion factor that can be used. It is the closest. Or none of the other actually tools, the 8 other tools, did not include any area or geographic code where a UAE company can identify and utilize. Now, the other step, as we mentioned, was, okay, they do not include a UAE geographic code. Does the tool allow for the user to enter the geographic or the conversion factor? Is it adaptable? And from the 8 tools, 5 or 4 other than the first one even that it has a UAE emission factor, actually the tool is adaptable. So if you have an emission factor that's applicable to the UAE and not the regional one, you can enter that. 4 of the other tools also have this function where it is adaptable. Now, it's adaptable, but you need a conversion factor to utilize. The addendum includes the conversion factors, sources of secondary data where companies can go to that have UAE-related emission factors. I need to point out that there are very limited commodities or functions that do have emission factors related to the UAE. So the company, if they're not utilizing a UAE emission factor, they would need to look at a regional emission factor. So because of these findings, what we included in addendum also is a recommendation section, which is a more general section for investments that are required really to help companies further, hopefully investments by the government or by academic institutions in the future that could help companies with these calculations. So the first recommendation that the addendum highlights is that the UAE really needs to invest in developing a comprehensive list of UAE emission factors that are associated with different commodities, be it locally produced or imported food, and across the value chain. And then once this study is done, maybe some of it is done, but it is not available in global open depositories. This data needs to be put in global depositories so that companies, individual researchers, academics can use them. The second recommendation includes investing actually in life cycle assessments and conversion factors of different waste management practices and the destinations where the waste, the food waste ends up. Destination is very important in food waste. It determines, first of all, if the waste is calculated as and logged in as waste, or it is logged in as recovered waste that does not end in a landfill. So it is very important also to understand the conversion emission factors that companies can use depending on the destination of where the waste that they are separating and sending to destinations other than the landfill, how do they account for those? So this would be basically then they would develop destination food loss and waste destination emission factors, and also it is imperative that these are added to the global depositories. And the third recommendation would be, it would be advisable if UAE can develop UAE-specific tools that can enable companies, municipalities, practitioners to really carry more in-depth and country-based analysis, and that can compare the impacts of different practices and different waste management alternatives. And also some of the tools that are not applicable to companies in the UAE can actually help companies put a value to the food loss and waste, calculate the economic cost, the social cost, environmental cost, energy saving, the return on investment of different food waste projects and initiatives. such tools will be very helpful for the country as it moves forward. And in closing, I would like also to point out an acknowledgement that during our evaluation of the 9 tools, we had also members from Element 6, which is a UAE startup also company, review the 9 tools to also ensure that our understanding of their use and applicability to the UAE was on spot. And thank you also. I think the tool is now with WRAP, of course, reviewed it, and it's now with WRI, and we're hoping that we will be able to launch it within the next, we will have the version available on our website within the next week or 2. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seta. And I'm sure companies would really welcome that robust, clear guidance, because it's quite a complex topic, GHG and the connection with food loss and waste. So that's really important guidance that will be coming shortly. In terms of this kind of next section, we'll open it for questions again. So any questions that you have around the guidance, please have them ready. We do actually have a couple of interactive questions using a poll function. If we wanted to maybe go to that first, and then we can go into the questions element of the session. So Sam, are you able to put the polls up and to say this is the opportunity for delegates to kind of participate in the session? So the first question we have are companies in your country calculating GHG emissions associated with food loss and waste? Not aware, limited, or well observed? You can click, you can pick one of those options, press submit, and you're doing it already. We can actually see the figures taking place here. So roughly we can see around a third ish are not aware of companies calculating GHG, to around 2/3 where there's some limited activity. And again, this just demonstrates the need for further guidance and support with it. I'll just give that as another minute, a few more seconds to see if it's settled. Looks like it's settling around those figures. Okay, so it demonstrates there is work to do. Okay. The second poll is, are you interested in calculating GHG emissions related to food waste? Yes, no, or indifferent? Well, we're seeing some very clear indication, 100% yes, that there is interest in this, which is fantastic to see. Okay, I think that's settled there. Okay, so it shows interest, it shows that there is some work in progress to do, and together with the help of guidance, we can make that happen. Okay, thanks for those that participated in the poll. In terms of questions in regard to the guidance, again, welcome those to come through the chat or the QA function if you're struggling with the Q&A function. So I was just going to ask just as a bit of an opening question. The guidance which has been developed, is that applicable for all companies, wherever they are on their journey towards GHG, the connection to food loss and waste and measurement?
So the tool that is that has the geographic code, the CGIR, is more towards producers. And if I remember correctly, plant producers mostly. So that's where you need to look after the geographic representativeness. You need to look at whether the tool covers your line of work as a company. So no, not all companies would be. That's why the third recommendation relates to developing UAE, or I believe also we can develop Arab region specific tools that cover the whole chain, the whole value chain. And I want to point out that although this study was to look at the addendum for how UAE companies can use it, but the first tool that's the only one that has the geographic code. The geographic code is actually North Africa, West Asia, and Central Asia. So it's applicable to all the countries in the Arab region because all of them fall within this region. Now, what in the addendum is more related to the UAE is the conversion factors, is the sources of data that we identified that for conversion factors, but also a lot of these sources are also like the FAO depository. It's the source for all countries. So any country in the region can also go to those depositories and look for data that conversion factors that's applicable to their country. Now, the challenge is that in our region, there's very limited data, and that the challenges that I believe that were identified with the UAE, I wouldn't be surprised if they're also applicable to other regions.
Okay, thank you. I just want to check, are there any other kind of questions coming through related to the guidance, whether it be the chat, Panima? I don't know whether there's anything else come through.
Nothing on chat for
Nothing else on the Q&A. Okay.
So there's a question said, will efforts happening through this program be marketed to public for best practice sharing? So as I mentioned, everything and this recording of the webinar would be made public. We're working more as Arab champions. We're focusing more on the regional level and working with country level actors. So this is the way that we are marketing it more, bringing together those country level actors. Now, working with the public in each country is more the role and the priority of national actors. And this is where we're looking forward to seeking how can we support those national actors as they work with the individuals and with the public in their countries.
Fantastic. Okay, we have had a question or two questions come in. They're closely related. What is the objective behind facilitating companies to measure GHG emissions from food loss and waste? Are there commitments from these companies to reduce their emissions? And another one closely related, are there incentives for companies to measure and to adopt this guidance?
So I would guess there are, and maybe Liz, if you have also an input into that, that would be interesting to hear as well. But as I mentioned, 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions is due to food loss and waste. Now, if we look, for instance, at the hospitality sector, many, at least of the international chains, have committed to the SDGs, to reducing their carbon footprint. Other retailers as well, hopefully manufacturers, we're looking at global manufacturers at least, but hopefully in our region as well, that are looking to go towards net zero or carbon neutral. This is an important factor that they might not have been looking at so far, that we're hoping to raise awareness that it is very important to, in your journey towards net zero, to look at your food loss and waste and to identify and measure it, because this would be a critical component of your road towards net zero, but also in reporting, because companies that want to go to carbon neutrality or net zero, they have to also report. And in their reporting, this will help them with reporting and calculating the carbon footprint of food loss and waste.
Yeah, I mean, I think adding to that, yes, I think there are an increasing number of companies who are having to do that. Increasingly, in fact, they're also thinking about scope 3. So even outside their own activities, they're thinking about what is the food loss and waste implications further up the supply chain where the food was first produced, and even, with the end user. So yes, I think, being able to measure carbon impacts is really important, and being able to demonstrate the improvement. I think it becomes complicated when you try to use that as an accounting tool, but I think it's important that you have it because you can then measure your own progress.
Thank you. Question just come in now. Does the programme have any cooperation with the NEMA programme, National Food Loss and Waste Initiative in the UAE?
Yes, we are in contact with them.
Fantastic. Okay, great. Okay. For the purposes of time, and as I say, any other questions that you may have, please post, and we can respond after this session. I think we can move to wrapping up today, and the webinar. I've just got one slide to share, just from my perspective, just to finish off. So,
and maybe Michael, also a lot of people mentioned about public awareness. All participants today would receive a recording, a link to the recording. So please feel free to share it. We actually encourage you to share it because we want the word to go out more, and you are active champions also in spreading the word.
Indeed, thank you, and that very much connects with the closing remarks, and say it's fantastic to see here today the launch around commitment, collaboration to 12.3. I've seen in the chat we're getting into some of the action and impact, black soldier fly conversations going on, etc. So it's great to see that we're really kind of connecting the dots and really thinking this through from commitment through to action. Time is not on our side if we are to really achieve the 12.3 target by 2030. It is going to take collective effort, and what we're establishing today within the Arab region and beyond are the mechanisms to allow that to happen. That Target Measure Act principles, we're really starting to see those flourish and deliver impact as well. As mentioned, please get involved in the launch material today. There's a link, as we've indicated in the chat, to joining Friends of 12.3 Arab Region. Please get involved. Please engage with the resources which will be developed through that network and beyond. Many thanks to the speakers today. Many thanks for those that have attended and participated in the conversation today, and many thanks to the support of SCDO with the webinar and the resources which we've touched on today. The webinar will be made available on YouTube after the event, so please have a look out, share, get that to your networks, and share the news. And finally, Seta mentioned the 7th of March. Mentioned the water footprint tool webinar. We can give a date to that. The 7th of March will join us for a launch of that tool and guidance. So again, we will have some link to some information to allow you to participate. And that's going to have a range of speakers from Thriving Solutions to RAP to WIMNO, talking about this guidance and then the practical application of it. So on that note, many thanks for today. I'll let you go a little bit earlier and say, let's keep the good work going and let's really deliver on this 12.3 target. Thank you so much.